Welcome to Executive Insights. My guest today is Kurt John, Chief Security Officer with Siemens USA. Named as Security Magazine's most influential people in security in 2020, Kurt is responsible for protecting a $25 billion business. In this episode, we explore the key ingredients for creating a value-based and collaborative cybersecurity culture. We discuss the importance of cultivating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce and strategies to accomplish that. Kurt shares insights into the leadership development program at Siemens that got him to where he is today. And he reflects on why having a growth mindset, being collaborative, inclusive, and authentic is the key to success. Hi, Kurt. So great to see you. I'm so thrilled to have you on the program today.
Thanks for having me, Nasheen. I think this is going to be great.
Kurt, as a CSO for Siemens USA, you report directly to your CEO and call your CIO a peer and a phenomenal collaborator. I think that in its own is something remarkable because you've already won half the battle for a large organization like Siemens. What do you consider as key ingredients for creating a value-based and collaborative cybersecurity culture? And what are the steps taken to get there?
I would agree. That's one of the things that Siemens really nailed. I'm thrilled to be part of such a dynamic and collaborative team. Not just the CIO, the general counsel, head of HR, we're all peers. And it's just wonderful to see how well we all work together to try to move the organization forward. I would say, to answer your question, one of the best things you can do is having senior leadership that's bought in a very collaborative approach where people see each other not as necessarily heads of functions or verticals, although that's what you are, but more so a team of experts in certain areas who sit and have a conversation and collaborate to try to solve these complex issues that organizations face. And it's the same for cyber. I consult with not just the CIO and head of HR and head of legal, but everyone to try to make the topic as democratized and decision making or input, I would say, as democratized as possible. So you have to have a very strong leadership at the top who are open to collaboration. The other thing that's really important is getting people excited about cyber. And I would say this sits squarely more so on the cyber team to try to do, which is to try to find new, creative, interesting ways to engage with the employee population. I think engagement is an excellent measure of how mature an organization is. If a lot of the user population and leaders leave cybersecurity strictly to the cybersecurity organization, then I think we're missing out on just an amazing collaborative environment that can really help solve some issues. For example, we all know that the primary modes of attack to this day is phishing. So can you imagine if you had a user population who were engaged and plugged in and always seeking to learn and so on, how well we could do on that front? That's number two, sort of keeping user population engaged. Number three, in creating this really cool ecosystem is always remembering and keeping the focus on the business, right? At the end of the day, cybersecurity is here to help the business make informed decisions when it comes to risk, but navigate very interesting and complex technological challenges in a way that sets them up for success and allows them to, co-create amongst themselves and with customers and protect that information and that journey so that they can do it with trust and confidence and come out on the other side successful.
Excellent points. C-suite sponsorship and collaboration, user
Mhm.
engagement, and really understanding the business.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think, to me, sometimes people don't necessarily see is identifying cross-functional champions for cybersecurity. And I know you've had some great strategies on that topic as well. So how do you go about identify and groom those cyber champions across the organization?
That is an excellent point. There's always this one individual I like to reference when it comes to this. First, in the topic of identifying those cross-functional champions, I've found it to be incredibly successful and a very valuable tool to leverage. Because what typically happens is when you're in a particular area of expertise, you're in it deep enough to understand what the nuances and challenges are and why it might be tricky to implement certain things. Persons who are in another area of expertise might not necessarily get that. And cross embedding team members or allowing team members to get more exposure to some of the nuance of your function. And here we'll talk about cyber specifically, allows them to better understand those challenges and become better advocates for, in this case, cybersecurity. So I had this one wonderful young lady who reached out to me, and she's always had a passion for cyber. And so she, on her own, she's trying to learn as much as she can, and she just wanted to connect. And so, I immediately reached out to her. We had a conversation. And in understanding what her journey is, my advice to her was, well, you need to get plugged in with cyber as quickly as possible because there's so many different ways you can take cyber, right? From governance to strategy to, operations. It's so many different ways. And so what we did is we have her plugged in with her team. She's actually going to do a really cool, what I call a virtual project, right? Where she's going to try to do a risk assessment, a cyber assessment of her organization. And then she's going to try to think through what those solutions can look like, and then she's going to work with her boss to implement them. That accomplishes so many different things. First of all, she is super excited, right? And we have indeed created a champion in a different part of the business. Her overall career journey and work experience has been enhanced because she's learning a new and interesting skill set. And more importantly, the business benefits because they get some transparency on some risks that might impact them in the short, medium, or long term. And they have an opportunity to correct those. So everyone benefits, my team, the business, this wonderful young lady, of course, the organization as a whole. So I would encourage listeners, people who are in a position to make this happen. I've found it to be just a phenomenal initiative that benefits everyone.
Absolutely agreed. It's such a win-win situation. And thank you so much for sharing that example. And another topic I wanted to explore with you is we're in this remote working situation for over a year now and will likely remain in the foreseeable future. What strategies have you implemented to enhance cyber mindshare and hygiene in the virtual working situation?
Yeah, great question. Now, what Siemens decided to do, what I call our middle of the road approach to how we're going to be organized in terms of where you work going forward, is 2 to 3 days from home, which means 2 to 3 days in the office. But that is, I would call that a general guideline. There are teams that are going to be 100% in the office, and there are teams that are going to be 100% remote. I would say, as an organization, as an enterprise-wide institution that's trying to address this, and a lot of it has to do with cyber, what you need to think about strategically is what type of dynamic setup can you start to implement that would allow you to be as flexible based on the needs of your employees, of the market, of how you collaborate, new technologies, other technologies being phased out, new technologies being phased in? How can you create a new dynamic technology environment that not just allows for, but promotes that type of flexibility? That's the first. So you really need a medium to long-term strategy that tries to its best to articulate what such a technology setup would look like. At the end of the day, what people are working on are computers. And so one important step that people really need to think about is, are you deploying the right technologies as best as possible that would help protect those, what we call endpoints, right? Or the computers and iPads that people are working on. Can you quickly detect if something is going astray and fail safely and fail quickly and recover from that? Another thing I would say is education and training, right? This is the first time that people are going to have to do a little bit more. Typically, IT and cybersecurity takes care of the network at the office, and that'll continue to happen. But now you have people at home who have never had to update their router, right? Or check to make sure that the firewall settings on those routers are accurate. So it's going to be, I think, it's a very exciting opportunity. Again, going back to to measuring the maturity of your organization when it comes to cyber, to develop some really new and interesting education and training materials, new ways to get people to engage in cyber, gamify it, right? Come up with these very cool cross-function collaboration. When I say gamify, for example, one thing you might think of is in terms of people who report spam, have a monthly competition, and you have like these employee awards for people who get to the top of the list, right? Who do a really good job of being careful and intentional and spotting these types of threats and reporting them. So organizations need to think through exactly how they want to engage with employees, so that when it comes time for them to say, hey, this is the latest threat we're facing. And so we'd like all our employees to really take another look to make sure not just that your router's updated, but your smart coffee machine, your smart TV, everything that can serve as a point of entry into your network, you really need to be intentional about. And I think in the end, if you also couch it as a way to help benefit employees, because with people working from home, the line between work and personal is blurred, right? And so, yes, there may be threats to work equipment, but really what you're teaching people to do is also protect themselves and their families while they're online. So I think that's important.
I think, especially to your last point, we have to make it relevant and the message really resonating with them personally. So when that happens, the level of attention and engagement just increases.
Agreed.
Kurt, you're such a strong advocate for creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce. Why is this topic so important to you? And given the current talent shortage and remote working challenges, how do you make that happen?
It's important to me for two, I would say three reasons. The first is I have two young daughters. The biggest driver for what I do are my daughters, my family. What I want to happen when they turn 14 or 16 or 18 or 21, at whatever stage they are in their journey and how they can best contribute to society and to make a place for themselves in society, I would love if we, the adults, can break down as many barriers as we can to provide them and every other child, regardless of race, religion, whatever that defines them, create a space where they don't have to think about those things. It's about who they are as an individual, what they bring to the table from their perspective, and not so much about their gender or the color of their skin. And so that's a huge driver for me. I just want to make the world a better place for my daughters. Everyone just happens to benefit as a result. The second thing is I would be remiss if I say I have not observed some of the challenges that we have as a society, right? And when you have historically disadvantaged groups of people, or people who are discriminated against just because of who they are, where they're from, how they look, that is not a place that takes advantage of all these brilliant people and brilliant and different perspectives that people bring. And we are worse off for it. Studies show time and time again, a team that's truly diverse outperforms a homogeneous team every single time. And that brings me to my third point, specifically for cyber. We have a talent shortage. Before COVID happened, it was about 3.5 million open positions. I fully expect after COVID, even though there's been a boom for cybersecurity, and that continues to be the case, there's still even more unemployed people out there. Why can't we hit two birds with one stone? Why can't we create new dynamic paths for people to gain access to, in this case, cybersecurity and enter the workforce and solve people who have historically, again, been economically disadvantaged or not have access to opportunities, and therefore also solving the unemployment issue. And cybersecurity wins a new, just wonderfully diverse workforce. We're able to lower the unemployment rate, and we get people engaged in a truly interesting topic that can really help to protect the world, because that's what we're trying to do. Whether you take trains, whether you take planes, you go in for a health checkup, you're watching Netflix, whatever the case might be, a lot of what we do is based on an assumption of trust. And that trust comes because we feel as though these different technologies we're engaging with are reasonably protected, and they're reasonably protected through cybersecurity. So it's a really interesting time for us to combine cybersecurity and diversity and really make an impact in the place in our society, the place where we work and we live.
Excellent point. Very well made. And Kurt, you and I met a few months ago when we were speaking at a panel together, and I was immediately impressed with your perspectives and also your approach and demeanor. And as I learned a little bit more about you and I understand why, your career really took off when you joined Siemens Leadership Development Program as an
Yeah.
external candidate in 2016. And it took you 2 years to complete the program that otherwise would have required 5 years for an external candidate. And
Yes.
you joined the C suite responsible for protecting a $25 billion business at the age of 33. Wow. So, what's your story and what do you attribute your successes to? And for the people out there who kind of feel they're stuck in their career, what advice would you offer to them?
There's so many thoughts that come to mind. The first thing I would say, I was incredibly fortunate in that leadership development program. And perhaps what I can mention is a little bit of how the program's structured. It's CFA is the acronym. And the way it's structured is I was brought in as a cybersecurity expert, right, as a manager. And even though that was my area of expertise, in order to broaden your horizon, broaden your skill set, help you think more laterally and more dynamically, I can lead up a global project on cybersecurity assurance, no problem. But after that's completed, I would spend the next, 4 weeks on a project where I am an accountant or I am looking into expert control issues, an area where I have zero expertise and I enter in as an entry level person. And the idea is as you do these and you sort of bring these different skill sets together, it invariably enhances your own expertise, which is cybersecurity. And I found that to be the case, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about but getting people exposed to different functions. I was very open to that. I embraced it, I loved it, and I took advantage of it. That's the first thing. So that really helped to broaden my thinking and my horizon and just the way I perceive issues and interesting and creative ways to solve problems. The second thing is I view people as partners. And what I mean by that is I have a very open and collaborative and inclusive approach to how I just exist in an organization. I value people's perspective because it's always interesting what people come up with. And I try to include that into whatever decision making I need to make. And so in all of my interactions within that program, I always took a very collaborative approach. And part of that was making a really good impression on my predecessor. Before she moved on to take a global role in cybersecurity, the way we collaborated and the way we worked together really, really did well. And so she was a strong supporter when this position opened up of my having it. So collaboration, inclusivity, really not being afraid to roll your sleeves up and understand other topics that you may not be familiar with. So I would say all that is sort of a growth mindset, really being open to changing your perspective, right? I typically seek out and have conversations with people who have a different point of view. Worst case scenario, I change my mind, which is perfectly fine because that means I was wrong and I want to be correct in my thinking. Or in engaging our discussion, I solidify my point of view, which is also fine, right? Which helps me to move forward in a more certain way. So a growth mindset, collaboration, inclusivity, authenticity also is really important. We are who we are. Life is short, but if we can all just try our best to be ourselves and be authentic in our approach to life, I think that also is an incredible skill set that can be learned. Some people are born with it, right? But it can be learned, learning to be honest and true to who you are and what you think and how you engage with people. So that was a lot, but I think I got it right. Growth mindset, collaboration, inclusivity, authenticity.
Excellent. There's so many treasures in that treasure box. So I really appreciate your sharing your insight and perspectives, Kurt. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you. This was fantastic. I always have fun speaking with you. We got to find a way to do this again.
Absolutely, Kurt. You've been watching another episode of Executive Insights by the IT Media Group. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, please check out other technology and leadership-centric content on our YouTube channel, including roundtable discussions and executive interviews. And don't forget to subscribe